welcome back, everybody. It is once again us, Jimmy Chang and Rod Lawton, Red Hot Talk, episode 50. Believe me or not, it's episode 50 already. 50, yes. It's a big number to celebrate. And let's talk about something that's hopefully ignite your passion in photography with our episode 50. For those who are slowly joining us, we are going to spend some time talking a little bit about Panasonic Lumix. I'm not entirely sure whether I should just call it Lumix or Panasonic Lumix or Panasonic. It's kind of a hard thing to say now because all the camera now has no Panasonic words on it. All the marketing material has no Panasonic, and they just simply use Lumix. But then if you go to some of the website, they have Panasonic Lumix. So I'm not sure what I should address them, Rod.
From what I can see, most US users call the brand Lumix.
Right.
I think in the UK, you're probably more likely to call it Panasonic. But there's kind of crossover.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's going to be interesting. But I would like to hear from all the audience who are listening right now. What do you call them? Lumix, Panasonic Lumix. I want to see how many of you actually call them Panasonic Lumix, or Panasonic, or whatever you want to call them. Yeah. It would be interesting to see how you call it. I still call them Panasonic for some reason. I just still use Panasonic. Yeah.
I guess Panasonic wants to separate the Lumix brand so you don't confuse it with bread makers and widescreen TVs and hair straighteners or whatever else Panasonic makes.
I think that's probably a strategic reasons for that particular branding thing. And also, of course, we would like to hear from you if you have any sort of user experience, if you already own some Panasonic Lumix cameras, or you have used them before but now switch over to another system. We really would like to hear from you, your opinion, and also for existing users, what would you like to see from Lumix in the near future. So all of these comments we are going to use as part of this chats today. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. But we're going to share, obviously, our own opinions about Lumix and also the present directions and also the current product line. There's going to be interesting talk today because I have a lot to say about that. I'm pretty sure Rod will have so. And at the same time, just to let you know that I also received my Panasonic Lumix GH7 yesterday. So I started shooting it this morning. So a user experience review will be coming at some point. Once I use it enough to tell you all about it, then I shall do a video for that. So let's talk a little bit about Panasonic. Should I say Panasonic Lumix? I'm still struggling to say which way should I go.
Should we say Lumix?
Lumix.
But then I suppose you've got Lumix G and Lumix S. So,
oh gosh,
two different things. Yeah.
That's getting confusing now. Okay, let's do Lumix. Right. Okay. So forget about Panasonic TVs and microwaves and all the other things that
bread makers.
Bread makers associating with the brand Panasonic. Let's focus on Lumix, which is the camera division, and we'll look at the camera. So, I don't think we need to go through the back now because it's kind of almost similar to what Olympus has done with the Micro Four Third, because they kind of started around the same time. They formed the Micro Four Third Alliance. So maybe we should start talking a little bit about the current lineup of the products, and that's bring it up to date since they have launched quite a few cameras this year, and some are good, some are not so good. And we'd like to hear from your experience or your opinion about these cameras as well. First of all, let's talk a little bit about, maybe let's get the latest product out of the way first. The latest product is the point and shoot camera, the bridge camera, the mega zoom camera. What do you think about this move from Lumix? Why are they all of a sudden bring out a bridge camera and out of nowhere? It's kind of like a big surprise to the community.
I don't think it's out of nowhere. I think what has happened is that all the camera makers predicted the end of bridge cameras and were a bit premature. And I don't know whether Panasonic does the kind of keyword research and search term research that I used to do on Digital Camera World, but it's very clear that the interest in bridge cameras never really went away. And I think the camera makers thought it would, and it didn't. So I think this new Panasonic is a reflection of that. And we're calling it new. I need to go away and check the specs very carefully. I think it's actually a reincarnation of an existing mega zoom bridge camera, just
Right.
like kind of refreshed, rebadged, reintroduced. It's not really, I don't think, a new camera, but it's interesting, isn't it? Because it shows that, I think we've said it before, I think a lot of camera makers ditch stuff too early.
Right.
And I think bridge cameras might be one of those things. I don't know.
But for what's the retail price? About £500, right? US pound, British pound. I think some 450, something like that. I can't remember exactly how much it's cost. It's not exactly a cheap camera though, and you know, I know bridge camera used to sell for more, you know, and I think the most notable one would be the Sony 1-inch sensor mega zoom bridge camera. That's go for about £1,200, £1,400.
That's,
Wasn't cheap
yeah,
at all.
that's a bit more of a premium product with a shorter zoom range. So what the new Panasonic bridge camera does, it gives you a massive zoom range, but with quite a small sensor. So
Yep.
it's a 1/2.3 inch sensor. Now I'm just checking, even as we speak, it's the FZ82D.
Yeah.
Okay, where I think, somebody tell me if I'm wrong, there was an FZ82 some years back, so this is kind of like a new refresh of that. So it's a 20 to 1200 millimeter zoom.
Whew.
But the only way you can get that, of course, is by using a very, very small sensor. It's the size of sensor you get in a smartphone, but probably without the same clever computational tricks. So
Yeah.
you're getting a massive zoom range, but the quality is always is going to be kind of stuck at a certain level.
And I think the aperture goes down to f6.3 or f8 in this one.
Let's have a look. So I've got the page up now, so I can actually tell you this. So it's got a 2.36 million dot EVF, so
Yep.
that's not so bad. It has the clever Panasonic 4K photo mode. So if you don't mind 8
They
megapixel
brought it
images,
back.
you do post focus,
Okay.
which
Right.
which I've used it. It's very clever. The only time I found it really useful though is when I had to write an article about it, and I don't think I've used it outside of that. So you've got 1 centimeter macro shooting apparently, although what you might call macro on a bridge camera, it's quite a loose term. I don't think it's what we would call macro. I think you'd probably call it close-ups really. But so what else have you got? Oh, all sorts. USB-C battery charging. Maybe that's one of the big changes.
Yay.
18 megapixels, but it is a 1/2.3 inch sensor. So that's not big.
No.
And you might guess what kind of quality you're going to get. I think across a lot of the zoom range, it'll be all right. I suspect at longer zoom settings, it might be less all right, but I haven't tried one. I shouldn't say. There's a possibility I may get one in to review, but I don't know for sure.
Please do share your experience next time when you handle it.
I've used plenty of bridge cameras in the past, but I
Yeah.
don't want to judge this one based on past experience because that's not appropriate or fair.
Yeah.
But my past experience is that at the longest zoom settings, there's a downturn in what quality there is.
Yeah.
And I don't think you should be too sure that the autofocus is going to be that snappy. But I shouldn't say that about this camera because I haven't tried it, so I better be a bit more, circumspect about this. But put it this way, I'm not hugely hopeful. Can I say that?
So that's the interesting thing, right? And for me, and I think when everybody just totally forgotten about the compact market and the bridge market, and when everybody's kind of like going for either the high-end expensive system cameras or the fixed lens but more premium kind of point and shoot cameras like the X100. I mean, I call it point and shoot because it's a fixed lens and a camera, just a bigger, more premium. You know, you're gonna spend 1,600 quid for a point and shoot.
Go steady, calling it a point and shoot. You're going to get some flaming for that, I think.
Well, I mean, they are when they can't change lenses. I usually call them point and shoot.
But you've got to it's aperture control and shutter speed dial and all that. You know, it's all point and shoot. Really?
Well, the Sony RX100 is a point and shoot camera, but you can also configure the ring as an aperture ring and all the other things.
Oh, sorry, you're talking about the RX100. Sorry, I thought you were talking about the X100. Sorry.
Oh no, I'm talking about that too.
Yeah. I think, yeah, but would you call the Leica Q a point and shoot?
That is a point and shoot.
Oh, Jimmy, you're going to be in so much trouble.
That's a rich man's point and shoot camera.
You are in so much trouble.
Well, for me, anything that you can't change lenses are point and shoot cameras. And to be quite honest, how many of these people who buy X100, RX100, the Leica Q, would use manual focus? Would they simply put in P mode, A mode, and just point and shoot? That's what they do.
There are some very keen photographer types out there who only like one focal length, or if it comes to using a Leica, they will settle for one focal length for the privilege of having a Leica. I don't think you can necessarily say that anything with a fixed lens is point and shoot.
Right, I get that point. So it's a matter of opinion. So I share mine.
Yeah.
No, don't get me
sure.
wrong. I mean, I like the Leica Q. You know, I do like point and shoot from time to time. If on something simple, I think you just want to take one camera out. Sometimes these kind of handy little cameras can be quite useful. And I mean, for the likes of Leica Q, of course, it's got a big, massive full-frame sensor and a relatively fast prime. So you can actually achieve a lot with the Leica Q itself without having to go through different lenses, especially now the Leica Q3 has quite a high megapixel count, so you can actually crop in and still achieve very reasonable results with different simulated crop modes in different focal length, 28, 35, and a 50, I believe. And so that's interesting.
I am going to have to agree with you, by the way, Jimmy. I mean, I was playing devil's advocate there, but I do like and respect the Leica Q. I've used different versions several times, and I've used the various incarnations of the X100 quite a few times. The thing that always stops me liking them properly is the fixed focal length. I have to admit, you're right. I wouldn't necessarily call them point and shoot, but they don't suit me because you are stuck with that angle of view and there's nothing you can do. And however much you might admire that particular mark or however much you might like that particular focal length, it's too limiting for me.
It is. I mean, I from personal experience, I mean, if you ask me to bring just one lens out, it's not impossible. But then again, if you are going out to shoot, I always find myself...
It is difficult.
There are times I would just say, I wish I had that focal length. I wish I had that lens with me. And that's the time when you say, okay, one single fixed focal length may not work in today's environment. I know there are a lot of past masters like Henri Gautier-Brosson, seems to just only using 50 mils. There are other photographers using 35, for instance, and Bruce Gilden like to use 28. There are some favorite focal lengths, but I wouldn't say that is the only focal length that they use. They definitely use some other focal length from time to time, so it's too limiting for just one single focal length. I'm not entirely everyone would be agreed to that.
No, it depends on what you shoot and how. I think in some ways, you can say people like Cartier-Bresson or Bruce Gilden made a success of a single focal length, but they tended to shoot in one particular style of subject. That could work, but if you like doing travel photography, or you do what I did last week, you go on holiday, you've got a mixture of landscape shots, you go and visit towns that are interesting. Go in museums, you go in stately homes, got some very interesting interiors. You can't do it all with one lens.
No.
So I shot at different focal lengths, everywhere from 15 to 105. And I wouldn't really have wanted to be without any of them. So if I was Henri Cartier-Bresson, obviously I'm not, I would be shooting a particular kind of subject in a particular way, and then a single lens might be all right.
Yep.
But
Yep.
it's not how I do stuff, and it wouldn't really work for me. I mean, if I was as good as Cartier-Bresson, which I never would be, I could make a career out of that kind of vision, and I wouldn't want to do all the other stuff.
So
But
Panasonic.
I shoot a lot of different stuff.
So Lumix latest mega zoom camera will be one for you, right? It's got a massive zoom range, give you a different focal length.
It would, except that I was in a few places while I was away where my 15mm was just about wide enough, and because these places, they tend to keep the blinds down to protect the artworks inside from daylight.
It's dark. Yep.
You're up at around 6400, 12800 ISO. That's not somewhere you want to be with a bridge camera. It's bad enough on full frame. You're always going to be fighting noise on a full frame camera, but you don't want to be in that kind of lighting with a small sensor camera, really.
Yeah, understood. And just for those who just joined us not long ago, we are talking about Lumix's latest bridge camera.
Sorry, yes.
And well, I want how many of you are interested in still buying these sort of like bridge camera or compact point and shoot cameras? I know most of you have bigger cameras nowadays, and I already see one of you and. Just the last comments here. I can't read the name. The text is my eyesight's getting bad. Jelenko. I can't read the word.
And I'm not sure.
Yeah, and you obviously you have a Q3. And that's obviously a magnificent camera. Don't get us wrong. I know we've been talking a little bit about that. And it's a brilliant, magnificent camera. And I'm pretty sure that whoever owns it is not going to regret it whatsoever. But yeah, anyone who will be still kind of looking forward to releases like this type of bridge camera from any manufacturer, not just Lumix, but like let's say if suddenly Nikon, Canon are coming back with these bridge camera with big zoom range in a relatively tiny sensors, will you be interested in getting one? And because it puzzles me, or more likely shocked me when Lumix announced the latest bridge camera. It's just like, oh my goodness, what are they doing? They literally just announced the S9, which is the full frame camera, then the GX7, the micro four thirds, and they just popped this one out of nowhere, and it's like, wow, Lumix is going 3 formats at the same time.
Yes.
And that's another thing that we'll talk about now. Is I think, in your opinion, Rod, are they? Do you think they are spreading a bit too thinly on everything?
It's a difficult one because this is very subjective, I think, in some ways, because it's my feelings about the Lumix cameras are a bit separate to their technical qualities. I do feel that Panasonic or Lumix is doing things by the numbers. I don't feel there's anything I've seen recently that has made me think, oh, I like that. That is clever. That is different. I think Panasonic stroke Lumix does not at the moment do different in any way, shape or form. So I admit, terribly disappointed by the Lumix S9, because it seemed to me to be the sort of thing a market researcher would decide was popular, not a photographer. It's yet another large sensor camera with no EVF aimed at this kind of beginner vlogging market that the camera makers seem to think is very important. I'm not sure about that. And it's just bland. And I suppose I had a similar feeling when I went away with, I had a Lumix S5 2X and a bunch of Lumix lenses, a couple of zooms and some primes to take away and try out. And I came away feeling they were thoroughly competent, rather good value for money, and performed quite well, but just lacking any kind of difference. I didn't come away thinking I love this stuff. I came away thinking, well, that did the job. Then sent it back to Panasonic, and that was that.
Yeah.
So
And you didn't miss it.
then Panasonic's Lumix cameras do not at the moment inspire any great excitement in me. They do the job.
Okay. And I share the same feeling as with regards to S9 when I have not physically handled the camera myself, but I'm just simply reflecting on what I've seen online, what I've read in terms of specs. I don't need to shoot with it to understand it, simply because we all use cameras day in day out. We all know how it works and things like that. But I'm just more reflecting on the design itself, the feature sets, the limitation of the cameras, and so forth. I was feeling a little bit disappointed when I saw the S9. But what caught my attention was the subsequent product, which is the GX7. And when that was announced, and I literally placed the pre-order straight away. I did not actually hesitate it one bit. I just saw it. I said, okay, that's it. I want to order this. Because I already used the GX6. I have the S9. I have the G9 Mark II. I like them. I mean, like I said before, I like a couple of things about Lumix camera, for especially the latest high-end camera, is that they have 24 megapixel sensor, which is I've mentioned multiple times. The reason I bought Lumix cameras because I needed something high resolution than OM system cameras, not because I don't like OM, just because they're maxing out at 20 at the moment, and some of the jobs I need to do requires slightly higher resolutions. So Lumix cameras are a logical choice for me, simply because I can reuse all my Olympus lenses and without any sort of compatibility issues. So that's totally fine with me. Hence, I got those cameras. And of course, when it comes to filming and videoing, and that's what Lumix is always known and strong about this particular area. So the GX6 was a no-brainer when I got it. And now it's the GX7. It seems to be the good combination of all the positives between the GX6 and the G9 Mark II, kind of got all squashed into one camera body. So that's exactly the reason why I just didn't hesitate and just pre-ordered it. And I know that once I've done my comparison review videos, I would definitely sell the G9 Mark II and the GX6 together, because I don't need two camera body. I just simply keep the GX7. Because all the other stuff, I have my OM1 or OM system cameras to fill the gap, so I don't need too many cameras with me. So it'd be interesting to see your thoughts about the GX7, because for me, it's an exciting product that replaces two separate cameras that I previously bought. And for some reason, I'm not entirely sure how Lumix themselves will feel about the GX7, in fact, because when they launched G9 Mark II, it was the first Micro Four Third Lumix cameras that has face detection or hybrid AF system, and it was a big thing for them. And the GX6 was still like a filming machine. They know that it has enough features to cover a lot of filmmakers. Filmmakers don't usually use AF anyway, so they most likely use manual focus lenses or cine lenses that needs to rack focus manually. So when GX7 came out, it literally almost like they're shooting themselves. It's such a good camera that without too much premium over the G9 Mark II, but you're getting a way more capable videoing machine while still maintaining literally all the photographic features of the G9 Mark II, bar the size. Obviously, the GX7 is a much bigger camera physically than the G9 Mark II. But for those who like to use a bigger camera, for instance, and the GX7, it seems to be, to me at least, is a pretty good a compromise to have with that size.
I think so, and I think as well. Do you think, Jim, with the G9 II and the GH7, that Panasonic is trying to maximize sales by making a jack of all trades and then another jack of all trades? So but they're going to compete with themselves. You've got the G9 II,
yeah,
which is kind of a stills camera, but actually rather good at video.
It is, yes.
And you've got the GH7, which is kind of a video camera, but actually rather good at stills. What's going on? What do you do?
that's exactly kind of the way I was thinking about it. And the G9 Mark II was supposed to be a stills focused camera with video capabilities, and the
Then why
G7.
make? Sorry to interrupt. Why make the video so good? Because it is good.
Yeah.
It made no sense to me.
No, I'm not entirely sure. Like, obviously these cameras would be in Lumix R&D schedule for a few years already. They will be working on this camera for at least 2 to 3 years.
Yeah.
So they know when they're going to launch it. They know the feature sets. They know. I'm not entirely whether these two teams who are developing these two cameras actually talk to each other
Well,
in-house.
I'd love to know. Do you think that they're all in secret silos and meet up now and again for a big paintball fight or something? I don't know.
It's funny because I know it's a Japanese thing. I'm not sure if you actually know about it. And I'm also into a little bit of mechanical watches, especially in Japanese watches. Seiko is a known Japanese watch brand.
Yeah.
And Seiko back in the 60s and 70s, they internally set up 2 departments. One is called King Seiko, one's called Grand Seiko. They would actually compete with each other within Seiko. So Seiko would keep doing the budget line, but King Seiko and Grand Seiko would be pushing the limitation of engineering. So they would look at ways to make their perfect watches separately, independently, without talking to each other. So it feels to me like the G9 Mark II and the GX7 is kind of like that. They have 2 separate teams. They're working their butts off trying to get the perfect camera out. And somehow, they created almost identical products.
Yeah, and it's confusing, and I think it can't help but do harm, because if somebody goes to a show or goes in a camera store and says, "Oh, I like the look of these Panasonic Lumix cameras, which one should I get?" How are they going to tell them? How are they going to explain it? They're going to say, "Oh, do you shoot mostly stills or video?" "Oh, mostly stills." On the G9 Mark II. "Oh, does that do things that the GH7 doesn't do?" "Oh, not really. But the GH7 is very good at video, is it?" "Well, yes, it is. Should I get that?" "Oh, well, if you're going to shoot video." "Well, I don't know. It's just going to go round and round, isn't it?"
Yeah, I mean that's the trouble. I think potential buyers and customers, or even upgraders within Lumix users cam, is going to have a hard time deciding which one they want to go for. Obviously, there are some differences. The GX7 obviously got the CF Express card, which is the main difference there, because you can, because of the fast card, you can do Apple ProRes internally, and which G9 Mark II can't do, because still maxing out at the current speedy UHS-2 SD card. So that's not fast enough to do any ProRes recording, while the the GX7 can. And obviously the form factor, one's a massively bigger camera, and it's got
Is it much bigger?
It is bigger. It's definitely bigger. It's thicker, it's bigger, longer, wider, taller. It's a massive camera. It's almost like a full frame camera in body size.
Yeah,
but then again,
both are in a way.
It is, but then again, if you use a lot of long big lenses, for birdings or wildlife stuff, let's say, I think a bigger camera actually works better than the G9 Mark II.
I think the G9 Mark II actually uses the same body as the Lumix S5.
Yep.
So,
yes, I think so.
While you might say that the Lumix G9 feels a bit big for MFT,
yep.
If you look at the Lumix S5 and put any kind of lens on that camera, you're going to be thinking, this body's a bit small. So it does depend on the lenses you put with it. And I think I don't mind the G9 II being quite large, but I do feel if only Panasonic had stuck to the design of the G9,
it
would have been fine.
I
Why
agree.
That was a camera which had its limitations. It's a relatively old sensor, 20 megapixels, not 25, video limitations, etc. If only they could have put the new tech in that body, maybe only me, I would have been very happy, because the G9 is a very nice handling camera. I'm not so sure about the G9 II.
How many listeners right now agree with that? I personally love the G9's ergonomics, the design of it. I love the top LCD plate where you can see all the settings. It's a photographer's camera, full stop. It is a photographer's camera, and the thing is, like. Even Lumix themselves knew it was popular. It was a great camera, and that's why they kept the production for so long, and people are still buying them.
You can still buy it, and do you know what? The price has actually crept up again.
Oh, really?
So that in the UK at least, it costs rather more than it did a couple of years ago. It's about $930 now.
Okay.
Which is quite a lot for an out-of-date camera, but it is, I feel, a nicer camera to shoot with.
Yeah.
But it's the sensor brings limitations
because
today.
To me, I mean, when I was handling the G9 Mark II, yes, it is small. It's got a quite good feature set, but in terms of physical control, and it's rather limiting. There aren't many buttons around, and compared to the original G9, and definitely way less than the GX7. So if you want a lot of direct control, a lot of customizable buttons that you can kind of fully personalize your camera settings, and the GX7 is actually a better choice because it's got bigger body. I know it's heavier, it's bigger, but then you've got more physical things you can touch and select. So when it comes to shooting, you don't have to go through menu that much. You just basically memorize those buttons where they are, and then just use your physical muscle memory to select whatever thing you need to do for that type of photography that you do. For that, I actually prefer using the larger Lumix body than the G9 Mark II. The G9 Mark I, obviously, like we already said, is definitely to me a better handling camera as well.
I think it's strange, isn't it? I suspect with the G9 II, Panasonic took the opportunity to save a bit of money by switching to a single body design that it shared with the S5, and not having to make two different bodies, which it would have done with the G9. Only a theory, but it'd be disappointing if it was true.
But it's strange, man. I think it's becoming common theme these days, and we sidetrack a little bit about other manufacturers, but I think even the likes of Nikon and also OM, I think the latest cameras are literally the same body as the older one. They just simply updated the internal guts, new sensor, new logic board, new memory, whatever. And I think it's more like perhaps it's a cost saving. I know it's just everything. It's about profit these days. So if they can reuse a body, why not? They save money developing a new product line, new mold, new tools to make these new shells. They just simply reuse them.
I think, in fairness to modern camera makers, it's always been about profit. But I think that the camera makers these days think that tech will sell more than design, and they've been wrong about a lot of other stuff, and they might be wrong about this. If you look at Sony, for example, when was the last time Sony designed a properly new camera body? Well, that'd be about 1890 or something like that. I don't know. Have
they ever redesigned a body? I think they look the same to me since the very first A7.
Sometimes they get a bit thicker if they figure out a way to put IBIS in, but that's it, really.
Yeah, I mean, they look the same to me. If you hold an A7 now and then you compare to the latest A7, whatever generation they have now, it literally can't tell the difference from distance.
They sometimes get a bit fatter if there's a heftier processor, or every incarnation has a redesigned grip. Yeah, you'd have thought after redesigning the grip 6 times, they might have got a bit closer, and that'd be it. But apparently not. But no, so I don't think Panasonic's alone. I think there are worse culprits than that. Yeah. But I do feel
go on.
that Panasonic has ditched designs that were better than the ones it stuck with.
Yeah, it's I mean, obviously they also so far, obviously we only see the G9 Mark II, the GX line. We haven't seen any lower end Lumix camera or Micro Four Thirds Lumix cameras like the GX series, like the smaller camera bodies, GM, any of those older, smaller more portable cameras are all but disappear by now.
Yeah.
And I'm keep seeing comments that popping up. They all talk about GX10, GX80, all these GX cameras before. I think they have a following, definitely have a user base there. You know, it just seems like the EM10 series or the Pen series in Olympus or OM System Cam. All the small cameras are gone.
They are, and I know you've got it. Have you got a GM1 that you rather like?
I have the GM1.
Yeah.
Where is it?
Yeah, whatever happened to those? The first time I saw those, I was at some show or other, and I couldn't believe it. I thought, how did they do that? And I was very impressed. But they've gone. But who knows if Panasonic can bring back the FZ72. And I have looked it up, by the way.
Oh, yeah?
This is the FZ72D.
Okay.
The original was the FZ72 in 2017. So 7 years ago. So this one, I think the displays are better. I don't know if anything else has changed, but it's also got a D. So that's got to be good, right? What's that? D for digital? No, probably not.
Okay, well that's interesting.
So it is closer to the old FZ72 than I thought.
Yeah,
but I think there's bits and bobs that are better. I think the EVF is better. The rear screen's better. Maybe other stuff is better. I don't know. But essentially, this is an old camera that's been exhumed and reincarnated.
Yeah. Oh,
and I think it'll do well.
Yeah. Well,
right, so yeah.
Corey's in the house. Look. Corey's in the house. Hello, Corey, and welcome back, everybody. I think we've come to a time we can say hello to everybody. We've got more people joining now.
Excellent.
I saw one comment, it's quite interesting. Some dude actually say, "I love my S9 ultimate dad camera. Pick up."
I feel terrible now because I slagged it.
I did too. Well, what I can say, we keep saying that there's no perfect camera, but there are perfect camera for you. Depending on what you do. For what if you have a preference or certain sort of form factor, certain weight, certain look, and I like certain things that some people hate. For instance, I love Micro Four Thirds cameras. I'm pretty sure a lot of people hate too. So
don't go there.
So yeah, it's not really about anything but yourself. As long as you're satisfied, you're happy, and that's all. That's what matters, to be honest. Even though we may have some opinions, but certainly it's more like an open discussion at the moment. We just want to see how everyone look at what we just talked about, about certain products that Lumix has come up with this year in 2024. Maybe even what you would like to see in the coming months, maybe years. So let's continue now. We talk a little bit about S9. We talk a little bit about GX7. We talk a little bit about the bridge camera. Oh, by the way, Chuck L is quite a funny comment. I don't know whether he actually meant it earlier. You said, does photograph cover bridges as well? when we say bridge camera, it's something else.
No, the light's too dim to cover bridges. Can't do that.
Yeah, no. It's funny words they used to call bridge cameras, only because there are obviously the very simple point and shoot camera, just like one of these guys. Look, I got it on my desk. Somehow I found it in my drawer. Look at this. This is the Canon Isis.
Do you know? I always felt that was a bit of a high point for Canon, the Ixus range. They weren't technically any better than rival cameras, but they did look really nice.
They do, and look how small it is.
I know.
It's brilliant, and it's interesting. So like the bridge cameras came about when they had these sort of like point and shoot, which has absolutely no manual functions, all automated. Then they have obviously the SLR back in the days, or DSLRs, and the more sophisticated cameras for enthusiasts and amateurs. And then they have these bridge camera, which kind of like bridging the gap between the two. Where they have better zoom range, they have manual overrides, you can change settings, you can change aperture, ISO, and everything like that. These were the bridge cameras that basically bridging between the traditional point and shoot and the more sophisticated big system cameras.
I think they first came about when more sophisticated cameras were wildly expensive and not very common. But today, you don't have to spend an awful lot more to get an APS-C or full-frame mirrorless camera of considerably higher quality. So I think the old gap that bridge cameras used to fit into has kind of shrunk.
Yeah.
So back in the day, a bridge camera costing 500 might have been attractive compared to a DSLR that cost like 3,000 or 4,000.
Yep.
But these days, good cameras are cheaper, a lot cheaper than they used to be. So I think the gap for a bridge camera to go in is quite small. But then again, you're kind of dealing with a different audience, aren't you? If you can say, look, here's the camera for $500 or whatever, I better look that up. There's got a 20 to 1200 millimeter zoom range, and if you bought that in a Canon, it costs you like $30,000, and you can have it for 500. What are you going to do? What are you going to do? It's an easy sell, really.
Then the same argument now. You know, you have an iPhone, you can get one of those attachment lenses that go like 800 mil equivalent.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because I think that is a bit like the bridge camera.
Yeah,
it's spectacular, but not great. And I think also, some of these telescopic attachments for your phone, I would not have any great confidence it would actually arrive if I ordered it. And if it did, I've even less confidence there'd be any good at all. You know,
well,
I'm always ready to be proved wrong.
I recently tested one in Japan, and it's by a known camera by known iPhone or smartphone accessory maker, Sandmark. They sent me the six time not a zoom lens, 6-time magnification lens. So you put on, it's quite a long thing. It's almost like a 4 or 5 inches long optics, and you attach to the tele lens of the iPhone, and it will give you an equivalent of roughly about 400 mil or 500 mil. I can't remember. So it's ridiculously long. But I have to say, the image quality is not great.
But if you look online, these things promise you know that you can look at the rocks on the moons of Saturn. You know, it's just all nonsense.
And a lot of the sample images they put online is actually not from that camera. It's actually from something else.
I mean, you must be aware that Panasonic has been in trouble.
Oh yes, yeah. That's another thing that
because
any of you would like to say something about that.
So I know how this happens, because it's a situation I'm familiar with. But for anyone who's not aware, most people must be. Panasonic has been, perhaps caught is the wrong word, but called out for using sample images to indicate features that were actually taken on other brands of camera, often rather better cameras. Yep. So people have said, well, look, this is cheating. Panasonic has said, oh, no, we're just giving you an indication of the kind of results you might aspire to. But of course, people expect any marketing material for a camera to feature images shot with that camera, and they weren't. So it's all got a bit messy.
It was. I think if they add the little text at the corner of the image saying they're for illustration purposes, that might have been cleared a little bit at least.
Small print, not actually true.
Yeah, and we got a comment here, the Sixters, saying that for professional videographers and filmmakers who embed their cameras in cages or on gimbal, and industrial design of a camera is irrelevant. And I think it's true. That's why you have these cine cameras that are basically a square box for you to mount things on it. That is very true. But they're also, but then again, there are also people who simply use the camera without any attachment. I know for a lot of professionals may do that, but there are situations when you simply don't have the room or time to set up a camera at location, depending on what sort of project you're doing, obviously. That you simply just use the camera straight on, without anything apart from maybe from the mic itself. You just use the camera as is. In that case, certain design elements, certain industrial design does affect that kind of handling. So it still needs to be at least easy to hold, for instance, and one of these boxy film cine cameras is simply not something for that type of situation or running gun situations, and that is why GX7 exists, or GX line exists, because there are handhold videographers out there simply just use the handhold, maybe with a monitor or mic, simply just mic'd up, and use it as is. And I've seen a lot of people do that. Yeah, I mean, I use a cage on the jigs, and that's for sure. But I don't use it a huge rig in a way. I still want it to be mobile and relatively agile when I do filming. And yeah, when it comes to big rigs, there tends to be slightly high budget, slightly more setup, and you got time to play with a set, for instance. And that's obviously a very different story altogether. But anyway, let's move on. And let's see. There's any other information here? Hi guys, Kyle. Brand new to camera. I just got a used G9. I'm going to take some product photography. Any lens suggestions? Oh, okay. Asking for suggestions.
What lens should you get with it, Kyle?
But at the same time, I want to ask you one thing first. What type of product are you actually thinking of photographing? Because it does affect the type of lens that you may want to get. And that would be my suggestions. For instance, just give an example. For those people who are into product photography, I know a few very popular product photographers and in the UK, and some of them photograph catalogs for Argos, and some of them photograph whiskies for a lot of the distilleries in Scotland. They all set up their studio differently when it comes to that type of photography. For bottles, for instance, they really need to have zero distortion by means of you can't shoot close up. So that means that they actually use a long tele lens set with the camera quite far away from the product, and then they want to minimize any sort of distortion coming from the bottle. So they want to have basically as close to the real life object as possible. So that's different to some type of product photography when you have to do close up. For instance, if you do jewelry, watches, things like that, you will go close up a lot. And in that case, you may want to invest in a two sets of lenses, maybe some 60 millimeters macro, 100 millimeter macros. That will give you some versatilities of doing close up, and also a little bit further away for medium tele shots when you get this less distortion distance shots, or maybe a slightly further out shot. But for larger objects, then you may actually have to consider something completely different altogether. Automotive is another a big product for photography, and those require very special setup, and you do need a lot of room to do it. People think that photographing cars are easy, just slap in a 24mm, just capture the whole car. But you do get a lot of distortion by doing that. Yeah. The car doesn't look the car itself. It will have weird angles and things like that. The car looks bulging forward. So it's not the type of lens you may want. Once again, for those type of large object, you need to step away using a big long zoom lens and punch in to get the more precise representation of the actual car itself.
So yeah, the reason I ask what kind of lens you've got at the moment is if you've got a kit lens.
Right.
I would always recommend using the longest zoom setting and getting further away for exactly the same reasons Jimmy's just highlighted. Every product looks better without distortion. And the way to get rid of distortion is to get further away, but use a longer focal length and a narrower angle. So I did some outdoor car shots for a friend last year. And by far the best results I got were with the Olympus 40 to 150 zoom. And I shot most of them at 150 millimeters. So more like 300 millimeters in full frame terms. Now that sounds extreme, but what happens is you get a much less obtrusive background, not just because it's defocused, but because it's a much smaller area of background. But also you don't get any distortion in the perspective of the car. And believe me, cars look much, much better from further away with a longer lens. Their proportions work exactly as the design is intended to make them look their best. If you get up close, it's like photographing somebody with a wide angle lens. You make their nose look bigger, or their jaw look bigger, or their ear look bigger. Same with cars, same with any kind of product. So I don't know, Jimmy, what do you think? Maybe the Olympus 60 to 60 f 2.8. It's a bit long, but...
No, I think the 60 is a good starting point, and because it's not too long, but it's long enough to have less distortion, but at the same time, it's versatile enough to go close if you really want to do some details of the products. And it's a very versatile lens, to be honest. I used that 60 2.8 quite a lot for many things before that, although recently I haven't been using it because I photograph less wedding these days. I used to do that for a lot of details photography within the venue itself, and so that in a way it's kind of almost like product shots, and so I photograph jewelry, I photograph a lot of decorations, and so I got the natural state without too much distortion with the 60mm lens. So that is why I did that.
You find yourself shooting from further away, and it can be a bit awkward indoors with that particular lens. But the only other thing I'd say, if you're just getting into product photography, apart from the lens you choose, it's the lighting is absolutely everything. Lighting and backgrounds, that is definitely the most important thing.
Absolutely. So let me know your thoughts. What sort of thing you may be thinking of photographing, and maybe we can give you slightly better answers, and then just simply giving you a zoom lens or a particular lens, because it does affect what type of setup that you may need. Because product photography is very, very specific. You can't just say product photography, because depending on what product it is, and it can be a very different setup from one product to another. Let's continue to look at some other comments right here. Larry, I still use the GX4 when recording meetings, presentation, etc. It has longer battery life than the GX6, whose battery only lasts about 80 minutes. Yes and no, depending on what type of thing you are doing. I think GX4 does actually consume less power simply because it's got less features internally, and the GX6 does have a bit more stuff going on. The IBIS does consume more power because it's got a slightly stronger magnets and slightly stronger resistance to movement. And I think it's also got the fan, and obviously it goes on and off automatically. You can set it on or off manually, but those also consume more power if you're recording a long time. And also depending on the EVF, the LCD technologies, I think they also play the part when it comes to power consumption. And I'm not entirely sure battery size. I think GX6 does also have a bigger battery compared to GX4 as well, if I remember correctly. Probably not a lot. Probably about 200-300 milliamp more.
Can you run it off a USB power delivery device?
The GX4?
While filming? The GH6?
Yes.
So I've got a massive, well, I say massive, a pretty solid power bank. If I was running out of power, I've used a Canon EOS R8 for live video stuff, and that's got terrible battery life.
Yeah.
But I can plug in a power bank, and that keeps it going for quite a while. It's not ideal. We would rather have a better battery. But I think if you're shooting 4K video for that length of time, any internal battery is going to be limiting, I think.
Yeah, I mean, the GX series has multiple power options. So you can run it via the dummy battery and actually use a completely external, huge, one of those V-type battery you can actually use. Or with the latest GX6 and GX7, you can use the USB-C PD feature, which you can basically plug a power bank and just run it for as long as the power bank can last. Obviously, you do want to have one with a slightly higher PD output, so that will cover the needs of the cameras. And because there are, I know confusingly, there are a lot of different PD power output as well. Some with only 5 watts, some with 10 watts, some 15, some 20, 40, you name it. There's so much out there. Just to pick one that is good, and high output. So because the camera itself will regulate itself, so it doesn't withdraw too much power from it. It will draw whatever it needs. But if you have a lower power, that's the bottleneck. If you have a low power output from the power bank, then the camera will simply won't be able to draw enough battery power to use basically, and you may run into trouble later.
Yeah, I came up against this many times in the past. I can't find one of my old power banks. I had an old phone power bank where you could find a cable that would go from the power bank to a USB-C port on the camera, but it wouldn't power it. So the thing I've got now is this Anchor thing, which wasn't massively expensive. I think it's about 50 or 60 pounds, but it's got about 2 or 3 camera batteries worth of charge in it, and it will do a proper USB power delivery. So
Yeah.
You might just I'd always recommend having a big modern USB power bank, USB Type-C power bank.
Speaking of which as well, and also be careful of the actual cable itself. If the
All right.
the power bank doesn't supply one, make sure that you have a USB-C cable that is actually designed and used for PD powering or charging. There are USB-C cable that you buy really cheap on Amazon that is data only. You can't charge them. And there are some that is very cheap but very low power charging cable, and you won't go far enough for you to power anything like the GX7 or GX6.
Yeah.
So you do need a better cable. They might cost you £10, £15, £20, but they are the one who designed for these sort of purposes.
It's difficult, isn't it? This is a real nuisance with USB-C cables.
Yep.
Like say, you've got some which are charging only, not data. Some which do data, but only at certain speeds. And some which do charging, but only up to certain wattages. I think a lot of devices, it's like trying to jump start your car with jump leads. You need big fat cables because there's a lot of current going through and it draws a lot of power. So you've got to be a bit careful with the cables, like you say.
And I'm just looking at another comment now. So Linda, probably get a used G95, G85 for now, and I have a was it GF7? GF7, uglier, slightly bigger GM1, but with a flip screen, and I like what it is. Basically, with a prime point and shoot. Yes, one of the reasons I like the GM1 is because it's tiny form factor, and if you do throw in a really small pancake lens or something, it is literally a point and shoot, but with the capability of adapting other optics, and that's the beauty of it. And I really think, personally, Lumix should really produce a small camera. They've done it for the S9, they've done it for the full frame, but that went south because this is not what people. Okay, once again, sorry. I'm sorry for the S9 user earlier. Okay.
You can't keep slagging the S9, Jimmy.
Yeah,
We've
but
got at least one fan.
No, I think, if you want to produce a small camera, go with the Micro Four Thirds, which you already have that platform. You already have the optics. It's a ready platform for you to produce the smallest camera ever. And why produce a small full frame when you can produce, let's say, the smallest interchangeable cameras again? That will give you a title straight away without saying that it's the smallest full frame for Lumix. I don't think it's the smallest full frame. I think the Sigma is the small one, right? That's the one also without the EVF. I can't remember the name of it. FP something.
Yeah,
and,
the FP, and the FP,
and, So that is a tiny full frame camera as well, mirrorless. Also using L mount, and so that if you really compare the size, I think they're quite equivalent between the S9 and that. And it really when you compare to the specs, apart from resolution, I think it's also pretty equal, right, between FP and also the S9.
I don't know. I think the FP is a bit more backward on video features. So I think it's got quite a slow sensor,
right?
And it hasn't got the IBIS.
No, it hasn't. But it does allow you to attach EVF.
Yes, it does. It does. I did have an FPL with the attached EVF. That was weird. It was a camera and you had an EVF. It was quite weird. But I suppose the question I would ask is, why would you get, and I'm sorry to S9 fans, why an S9 when you get Sony A7C? Now, the S9 has better stabilization, better video, and it can do clever stuff like in-camera LUTs.
Yep.
But it hasn't got an EVF, and the A7C has. So I just think Panasonic went hell for leather with this kind of EVF-free concept, and I just think it's left it in the wilderness a bit. But who knows?
Look at this! Isn't this gorgeous on the GM1? Like a nice silver menu lens. It looks the part.
Yeah.
This is a TT Artisan 50mm f2. So equivalent 100mm, but look at the size of this. So if you want a small camera, Lumix should do something with the Micro Four Thirds instead of full frame. Just give me another GM. Let's call it GM2, something, and then it's cool. just look at the size. It's just amazing.
I had a GX9 for a while, not GX9, a GX8.
Yeah.
I found it just a fraction too big for the compact camera concept, I think. But yes, the GX9 was a little bit smaller again. The GX series, I think, was quite good. I got this today for review.
The
No,
GR.
that is right.
Is it the 3X? It's the new one.
I think it's the HS. I need to find out what the difference is.
Right.
It's probably got a different button or something. But I thought you might be amused because I know that this is a fixed focal length lens, so it's a 40mm equivalent.
Yep.
But it's very small, isn't it? And you can get conversion lenses.
Yeah. Yeah. You got that too.
quite big. So
then it doesn't suddenly transform the camera from a pocketable camera to a not so much pocketable camera.
No. It goes from a pocket camera to a wheelbarrow camera.
Oh gosh. Right,
But anyway, it's interesting.
Yes,
It just shows you can't have everything.
No, you can't. Unfortunately, like we said all the time, like there's no perfect camera. There's not such a perfect world out there. We always have to live with the compromises when we choose something.
Yeah.
And Doug here, for me, the GA9 Mark II is very comfortable, whereas the GX7 was not something that I was willing to carry. I wouldn't disagree coming. I wouldn't disagree from the form factors point of view because, like I said, the GH6 and 7, the same body, they are bigger, heavier, taller, fatter. It is a big camera, it's as big as I would say a full frame camera size. It still weighs a little less than a full frame camera. I would, if you just compare my ZF, for instance, and ZF is actually heavier than the GX7, but if you want a lightweight system, if you're a Lumix user, yes, the G9 Mark II is definitely lighter and smaller, so it's easier to pocket. Well, not pocket, but easier to put in the camera bag and without feeling too much weight. At the same time, the OM1, EM1, they're all very, very similar. I'll just have it right here. It's also equally small, so depending which cam you're on. So there are two micro four third cameras, and I don't know if you can actually see that. You can see that the OM is actually still slightly narrower, slightly shorter. And so if you want to small micro four third camera, the OM is still the smallest. I mean, compared to the high-end ones I'm talking about. But the difference, obviously, between the OM and the Lumix is the resolution at this moment in time. One is 25, one is 20. But they're both equally good cameras, just depending whether you do need a high resolution or not. I use both interchangeably, and I don't personally find too much of a difference when it comes to operations, day-to-day shooting. Don't forget that I shoot professionally. I do portrait work, I do documentary work, I do occasional filming when I'm out and about. Both of these cameras will suffice for what I need to do. I know if you are more of a video guy or more of a hybrid guy, the G9 Mark II definitely have better video features, that's for sure. The OM1 is pretty limited. Still capable, but just pretty limited because you don't have open gate, you don't have anamorphic compensation. You do have a lot more codecs to choose from. You have high quality compressions, for instance. It's all with the Lumix cameras. So if you are more into the video side, and I would pick any Lumix cameras, especially the G9 Mark II or the GH series 6 or 7. They will offer you all the video that kind of features that you will ever need.
I suppose the question I'd always return to, this idea that the GH6 is somehow bigger and heavier than the G9 II.
Yep.
I can understand that if you have the two bodies side by side. And this is a genuine question, so I'd like to know the answer. If you put a lens on both, the same lens on both, such as the Panasonic Leica 12-60, f2.8 to f4, fairly substantial lens. Once you factor in the lens, is there really so much difference? There is, I can see that in the bodies on their own, but nobody ever takes pictures without a lens. And I can imagine there is a significant difference with smaller lenses. But with bigger lenses of that sort, is it really that big a factor?
No.
I'm not expressing an opinion. I'm asking a question. I've never felt it was, but other people may feel it still is.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, we discussed about size of the cameras before. Yes, and there are advantages of smaller cameras, but also compromises. We talked about compromises all day long today. You just have to live with that compromises, so depending on what sort of thing you do, what type of things, or what sort of gear you have. For those birders, wildlife guys who love long telly, big zoom lenses, small body just simply won't work. Ergonomically, it just would not work. You need a grip. You need something to balance the camera. You need something that with a substantial grip, so you get a more secure fit in your hand when you come to photographing. So any of these, I would say even these are smaller cameras. That these are too small for big lenses, to be quite honest. And you may want to add a grip just to make sure that you have that balance there. And hence, I know that people always say that the E1X or the OM1 are too big of a camera for Micro Four Thirds. But they are designed for handling. They are designed for professionals in mind. So that means that they want to hold the camera securely for a longer period of time. So they have the versatility to use heavier lenses. For travelers, of course, you want the smaller cameras. It's easier to pocket, easier to transport. So they're very, very different cameras altogether. Same thing with full frame. Full frame cameras may be getting smaller, but then again, full frame lenses aren't small, and they're not light either.
I spent years working on a Nikon magazine, and if I was shooting one day with we had a Nikon D4 for a while, and if I was shooting with a regular kind of kit zoom for this system, the D4 was just like, this is stupidly big.
Yeah.
But then one day, if you're shooting with a Nikon 70-200 f2.8, I think, oh, for Pete's sake, give me the D4, because I can't use it on this smaller D600 or D700 or even maybe a D750. Give me the big camera, for heaven's sake, because this is a big lens. So it's all about balance, isn't it? But
it is.
So I've got a provocative question to throw in. Should Panasonic just ditch Lumix G and concentrate on Lumix S? Or another question, was Lumix S a mistake? And was Lumix G always a place where Panasonic should have stayed?
Right, for those who don't understand the difference between the G and the S, and what Rod is specifically referring is to the format, and full frame and the Micro Four Thirds. So, guys, it's your voice now. Let's hear from you guys. Do you think Lumix has made a mistake of entering the full frame market, or what they should be doing from now on? Should they really be concentrating on one of the formats, either Micro Four Thirds or full frame, and give us a reason why they should be doing that? Or perhaps maybe they should concentrate on the bridge cameras.
Don't.
We would like to hear your thoughts, and why would that be? Because that would be quite an interesting. Because I want to see how Lumix would develop in the next 4 to 5 years. I want to see plans from them. This is what they would like to do. For instance, we talked about OM system last time, and OM obviously has a very clear direction at the moment. They want to focus on wildlife, they want to focus on outdoor stuff. So there's a clear direction what they want to do. Product line wise, obviously we want some slight diversities. We want some more varieties for other photographers other than just birders and outdoor guys or macro guys. We want wider range of lenses, like fast wide angle zoom, prime lenses, for instance, some more updated optics from the 1.8 lines, the smaller weather seal primes, for instance. So what about Lumix? And let's hear from you guys as well. Speaking of lenses, it just came to my mind. Lumix hasn't really been doing or very active in terms of lenses. They focus on a lot of the bodies, but what about lenses? I know they did. They shocked me with the 9mm, which is what I have here. The 9mm 1.7, I think is a really cool lens, and that was a shocker because no one actually expected them to release this lens when it first came out. But other than that, they're relatively quiet when it comes to lenses.
I think quite a lot's gone into the Lumix S lenses, the full frame ones, and they've built up quite a good. I think in the early days they did some seriously heavyweight professional lenses that were really up against established competition, and I think even today they don't look too that competitive. But since then, there've been a lot more kind of affordable and appealing zooms and primes. Like there's the what is it, the 12 to 24 f4 to 5.6 zoom is well under $1,000 or £1,000. I think it's about 700, which is pretty good for a decent quality full frame wide angle zoom. And there's is it 18 1.8 or 20 1.8? I should have looked this up beforehand. It's 24, 35, 50, 85 1.8 lenses, which are quite affordable. And they're all the same size. They're nice for video because you can put them all in the box. You won't have to rebalance your gimbal. They're not massive and heavy. They just work. So I think I think Lumix has done quite a lot of good work, good sensible work on its full frame lenses. But for MFT, not much has happened. Which is and some of the MFT lenses that came out with original cameras are looking past their best now. You know,
especially since they upgraded especially they upgraded the sensor resolution. Some of them starting to feel dated now.
Yeah. And autofocus has come on in leaps and bounds. We don't really notice, but a lot of older lenses, the AF actuators are really quite slow and noisy. It's not just Panasonic where this has happened. And it does mean that though it looks like you've got a huge range of lenses to choose from, there are some older ones that you probably wouldn't enjoy using for that reason.
Yeah, I think some do just reply as well. Yeah, you're quite right. And Lumix are pretty active with the full frame line of lenses development, but pretty much ignoring the MFT, even though they have launched 2 brand new Micro Four Thirds cameras in a matter of last 12 months. And so they have the bodies, but they simply haven't got new lenses for Micro Four Thirds. I presume they are relying on the current existing Micro Four Thirds catalog, which span between multiple brands. There's OM System, Olympus, Panasonic themselves, and they got, of course, all the third-party manufacturers from Laowa, all the Chinese, basically other Chinese manufacturers, TT, 7 Artists, and all the others. But to be quite honest, a lot of the performing high-end AF lenses are still between OM and Panasonic. There's not much else out there. At some point, either OM or Lumix will have to update their lenses to reflect their current technologies, because, like you said, some of the optics are starting to feel its age, and some of them, that is current lenses that you can still buy new, are dated all the way back to 2012, 13. These are old lenses. They do need some sort of update, and whether optically or even the actual construction of it, and they just don't fit anymore. I don't think you can say, okay, for kit lenses, maybe it's so bad, but if you have to pay £300-400 for a brand new lens, I think users are now expecting a little bit more.
I think early lenses were optimized for less demanding sensors.
Well, there were 12 megapixels to start with.
Yeah. So if it goes a bit soft in the corners, it doesn't show too much because there is some resolution there to reveal it. But then these days, the resolution is practically twice the size it was. The limitations of the lenses start to become a bit more painful. Yeah. And it's no good saying, well, then don't pixel peep. I think the real issue is that if you have a sensor whose resolution is so very different to that of the lens, you can't help but notice it, and it will annoy you.
Right.
So I think some of the older consumer lenses, I think they've had it.
Yeah.
They're not useless, but they don't really perform like a modern lens anymore.
No. So depending on what sort of thing you are looking for, but if you got some of the latest cameras, definitely don't get those lenses because you'll be disappointed.
I think the Panasonic Leica ones are very good, like the 12 to 60. and
Yep.
I'm pretty sure that is it an 8-16. That's
The
very good
2.8 to
too. Another
f4. Yes. Yes.
Yep, yep.
Yep.
It's a bit annoying. They're variable aperture, but they are very good lenses. But some of the older consumer lenses, like I've used the 14f 2.5 a few times.
Yep.
That's not good on a modern sensor. And the 20mm f1.7
Yep.
is a very nice lens, but it's the autofocus is so crunchy by modern standards. So
Yeah.
these things may or may not bother you, but they do show how lenses have changed and how what we look for today means we might not be satisfied with what was made 10 years ago.
No, but that's with a lot of things, really. Like across the
Yeah,
board.
yeah,
And yeah, I mean,
yeah.
like you said, you complain about Fuji, right? Fuji. Some of the Fuji lenses are simply not good enough for
I've
today's 40 megapixel
I
sensor.
I'm fed up because I've had to return two lenses I was relying on.
Yep.
I've returned, well, rather I sold my Fujinon 16 to 80.
Yep.
So it's like a 24 to 120 f4.
Yep.
Fantastically useful, but just not good enough.
No.
Past about 16 millimeters, the
Yep.
quality just fell off too much. I can accept a bit, but not
Yep.
that much. And I had a 10 to 24 that had to go because at 24 millimeters, the quality fall off at the corners
Yep.
was just too much. And this was not a problem on the 26 megapixel and 24 megapixel and 16 megapixel Fujifilm cameras I used, but it's a very apparent problem on the 40 megapixel X-T5
Yep.
because the difference between what the sensor can resolve and what the lens can do becomes painfully apparent.
Yeah.
The drop off in performance, you wouldn't have noticed it before because the sensor wasn't that far ahead, but now
Yeah,
it
but
is, and it really
I think
shows.
I think that's an annoying fact.
Yeah.
Not just with Fujifilm, not just about Michael Four Thirds or anyone really.
Yeah.
Let's look at Canon, for instance. Canon. And I remember during the DSLR developments when they were having this megapixel race in a like 2000s, year 2000 range, 2000 2010, and they're jumping like all over the place from 8 to 10 to 12 to 16 to 20, 24, like all the way to 36. They were jumping every year, and all of a sudden the lenses were not good enough. People buying the updated lenses because, oh yeah, I just bought a 24 megapixel 5D Mark IV whatever, and I need a new lens because my old lens doesn't resolve as good. So they bought they bought the Mark II, and 2 years later, Canon released a 40 megapixel DSLR. And then the lens is not good enough again, so they released the Mark
50.
III,
Yeah. Yeah.
5DRS, I think, and
50,
then,
yeah, that's right, yeah.
yeah, and people who invested thousands of pounds on these lenses suddenly fell out of date and they had to buy again if they upgrade the body. And it's an annoying thing for a lot of consumers and photographers when obviously it's whether you can accept the resolutions that the lens can resolve. Certainly for those who buy into the high megapixel count cameras would expect at least the lens to match, and you produce the quality, well, the money they spend on buying these high resolution cameras.
I think with any lens, you expect the resolution to fall away at the edges of the frame. If the sensor resolution is very, very high, that fall off, the difference between the center of the frame and the edge, becomes very, very obvious.
Yep.
Whereas with a lower resolution camera, it's not so apparent. So the idea that more megapixels is always better, I don't really hold to anymore because it highlights deficiencies in other areas a bit painfully. So that I thought I've used Sony A7R II with 40 megapixels. I've shot with the 61 megapixel A7R4 and 5, and the resolution is spectacular. But
Yep.
if you buy G Master lenses,
Yep.
don't buy one of these cameras, then buy, like a cheap consumer G lens or third party lens, because you will see the flaws a bit too readily. So I don't know. I think this is kind of going to sting Panasonic a bit, because with the Lumix with the Lumix S cameras, the full frame ones, it's fine because they started from ground zero, so to speak, and they've been designing lenses for this resolution from the start. With the Lumix G range, some of these older lenses were not designed for sensors with this kind of resolution. So like that tiny 12 to 32 millimeter kit zoom, that looked great on the early cameras, brilliant lens. But when you put it on a modern 20 megapixel Lumix G, you know, the cracks start to show a bit, sadly.
Yeah,
but you know, we don't have the same expectations. That's just me.
No, I mean, I think it would be quite safe to say that, and the high resolution isn't for everyone. I know we may like to see high numbers. You know, it's an attractive thing to see. For those who like to pixel peep and punch in the photo, doing 100% zoom to have to look at the details, it's fun. But then if you don't have a lens that can resolve that sort of details, it's not fun, because when you do 100%, you see, what am I seeing? It's all mushy. It's all like
it makes you dissatisfied, and it becomes the opposite of fun.
Yeah,
you can no longer enjoy it in the same way.
And then you start looking, oh, I just spent $3,000 on this camera. Now I'm starting to have to look at $5,000 for the lens, because I have to look at something that can match the sensor.
in a weird kind of way, a lower resolution sensor is better, because it kind of caps your expectations.
Yeah,
and it hides a lot of the deficiencies in lens performance at extreme edges or extreme settings or whatever. Yeah. But a higher resolution sensor is very unforgiving, and you see all sorts of stuff you wish you hadn't seen.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's why for me, unless I really need to, I rarely want to go past anything 24. To be quite honest, you know, like that's why I stuck with or not stuck, but I'm happy with the 20 megapixels for so many years, because it's a sweet spot. I don't need bigger than that. 20 megapixel is more than enough to print like an A4 size 10 by 15. It's plenty resolution to print that sort of photos. And 10 by 15 is not small print; they're quite big. So like, unless you're really looking for wall size, canvas size, like prints that with details, you don't really need that sort of resolution. And even 24 to me is too much. But you know, as we speak at the moment, I do have to submit work with 24. So that's all I can say.
People ask for it, yeah. But the thing is, if you go for a high resolution to do giant prints, that only makes sense if you're expecting your audience to go like that far away from it to look at the details. And this is not usually why people make big prints. They usually make big prints so that people can see them from much further away.
Yeah.
So you don't really need additional resolution. If you'd asked me 5 years ago, I'd have said exactly the opposite. But I think in some ways, given the kind of markets that professionals are supplying images to today, we're kind of in a post-resolution world now.
Yeah.
You know, 5 years ago, we would have said 24 megapixels, oh, not sure it's enough. But these days, we're all shooting 24 megapixels and downsizing images for use. So...
Well, if you look at the latest crop of cameras, a lot of them have been released for 24, 26 megapixels. They're not really like 50, 60 anymore. You know, there was a time when all the new models have higher numbers. Every generation, they go higher number and higher number. You know, like they keep going up. And now it seems to the point that they realize, not many people actually asking for that sort of thing. And more specifically, probably they realize that a lot of our lenses are not up to date to that sort of resolution. Let's scale back a little bit.
That's the trouble. But thinking of Panasonic, when Panasonic first went into the full frame market, they had the S1 and the S1R. What's happened to the S1R? Will there ever be another? So what was that, 47? It was, wasn't it? 47 megapixels. Personally, I thought it was a wonderful camera, but there seems no indication that Panasonic will ever do another. So 24 megapixels may be it. But how do people feel about that? Would they like to see the S1R back? I think I kind of would, but I don't think it will happen.
That will be an interesting thing to do. I'm just reading another few comments here. Enrique actually said that Lumix can support both. I think that's relating to the earlier comments there, micro four third
Yeah.
and full frame. But I think the S series full frame is the future. I had a conversation with a Lumix rep about 9 months ago. He said, "Keep it real. No one comes to Lumix camera for photography."
Well, it's news. That's news to me, and I
Yeah.
review cameras.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's an interesting statement there.
I think possibly that was a conversation with somebody trying to force a conclusion. I'm not.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that's true. I mean, the S5 and all its variants, they're extremely effective photography tools. You can't write them off for photography.
To be
just like
honest,
that.
you know, like I told you guys when I bought the GX7 before the G9 Mark II came out, I bought that for photography first instead of video. You know, obviously I do video professionally, but that wasn't what came to my mind, you know, because I needed a high resolution micro four third camera, and the only one that was available at the time was the GX6, because that was the only one that's got 25 megapixels. All the others are 20, and that's why I got it, and it was a fine photographic cameras.
I certainly haven't used the GH6 as much as you for photography, but my feeling was that although it is being pitched as a video camera, it was extremely effective for stills photography, and it's designed like a stills camera.
Yep.
You know, got your PASM dial, your function buttons, all the control dials where you'd expect them. It's very good photographic camera. So I just wonder if Panasonic's marketing or its image of its own product is a bit weird somehow.
Yeah, I mean, I get it. You know, Panasonic is always known for the video cameras, and back in the days, we remember that all their camcorders were very, very popular and amongst amateurs and serious enthusiasts. You know, the bigger range. You know, you're going up to like £3,000-4,000 at a time, and all the HD camcorders. Then they're known for it. That's why their videos are always way ahead of everybody else when they first came out, and that's without a doubt. But ever since they entered the camera making market, when they start making like micro four third cameras, they were shaped like a traditional camera with the grip, with the shutter button on the grip. It literally is a camera, photographic camera, just have video features.
Yeah, and we probably also shouldn't forget the BGH.
Yeah.
One, and what's the other one?
Oh yeah, the BGX. Yeah,
so
yeah.
The box cameras.
Yeah, the cine
So
camera.
we're not talking about those, but they're another product line, aren't they?
Yeah, what happened
I
to
don't
that?
know how well they've done.
That's stopped now, right? They're still selling
Is
them?
it?
I'm not entirely
think
sure.
so.
Do they still see the BG1?
There's two, aren't there? So there's the BGH one, and there's a full frame one, unless I've got the names the wrong way round. BGH. Let's have a look. Lumix box style cameras. So you've got the BGH one, which, as far as I can see, is similar in principle to the Lumix GH6S. Remember that?
Was it G6S? It's a G5S.
There was. No, there's a. I think. No, you're right. GH5S. My apologies. GH5S. Yeah. So that's all about speed rather than resolution. So that's, I think, evolved into the BGH one. But there's a full frame one as well, which I'm just trying to track down. So I think they're still current. Let's see if B&H is still selling them.
B&H has everything. They probably have some old dead stock anyway.
They will. They will have bought them all and they'll sell them for the next 20 years.
So that's why you're checking. Angelo has a comment here. Hi, Rod and Jimmy. Greetings from Netherlands. Hello. Is Panasonic able to photograph the match of today?
I'm not quite sure what that question means. Does that mean, is Panasonic the official videographer, or does he want Panasonic to record it so that he can watch our live stream? I don't know. Might need more explanation there.
If you're speaking about photographing events or sporting events, and I think they're capable. I know
Yeah.
most people would think that, oh yeah, if you want to photograph sports, you gotta use a full frame cameras or larger format cameras that can push the ISO up when you're shooting in a much lower or challenging lighting situations. But Micro Four Thirds is equally capable. And to be quite honest, if you got some of the pro lenses with 2.8 aperture, if you should have 6400. In most of the situation, you're probably fast enough to do a lot of action sports anyway. Yes, 6400 may sound quite high, and but I think with today's technologies in post productions and editing, you can easily get away with a lot of the shots unless you are looking at some sort of artistic piece for sport actions. But most of the people who are photographing sports are literally photographing the moment, and for journals and like sort of publications anyway. So they don't need specifically very high quality shot. To be quite honest, most of them will be printing on the magazines or website, which don't require that sort of resolution or clean images anyway. They just want that moment to be captured.
Is the question about stills or video as well?
Stills, photograph.
Stills, right? Okay.
Yeah.
So I think the issue there is I don't think Panasonic has got the same incredibly fast electronic shutter burst rates as rivals, and perhaps not quite such sophisticated AI autofocus. Some dude has reminded me that the full frame box camera is BS1H, which I've just found on the Panasonic website. I'm not sure that's still going.
Right. Okay.
Because B&H doesn't have it. B&H only has the Micro Four Thirds.
Oh, yeah. When BHF doesn't have it, then it's gone. It's official.
Nice, man.
That's official. That's official. Right.
So I reckon the BS1H was basically a box version of the S1H.
Ah, okay. Chuck L has a comment, which is kind of interesting because I wonder how far print science can be pushed with AI. We've talked a little bit about AI before. It is true they're getting more sophisticated, but AI is still, even when you talk about enlarging, is manipulative, is generative AI. Is looking, when you enlarge something, the AI trying to work out exactly what happens in between those pixels and then trying to fill the gaps. And that's what these AI resizing thing works. And a lot of the time you will find that is generally acceptable if you don't enlarge it too much. If you let's say you want to go for like 20%, 30% bigger, I think the AI does a pretty good job in just filling up those little gaps. But if you want to double the size, like 2 times, 3 times, 4 times, that's when you start having trouble. And I haven't seen one software at the moment in any sort of format, stills or videos, works very well when it comes to that sort of enlarging or enhancing. All the AIs, it will fill the gaps, but they look soft still. They're not pin sharp because they just simply don't have enough details to manipulate.
I think as well it's a difficult thing to evaluate scientifically because there are no measurements for how good or bad AI enlargement is. You've only got people's opinions, and people will have different opinions, and you'll have Topaz fans, you'll have On1 software fans, you'll have, who else can I think of? Adobe Super Resolution fans, all of whom say the enlargement is fantastic. You can enlarge it by 1,000,000% and it looks perfect. I'm just exaggerating. But the difficulty is you're often going to be dealing with quite partisan opinions.
Yeah.
And they may not reflect your own experience when you try to enlarge photos. I'm kind of with Jimmy on this. I've seen AI enlargement systems which work very well on kind of random natural textures like grass or stone, because no one's to know what they would have looked like if they'd been captured. So AI is very good at imagining what things would have looked like at that resolution. Where I've seen it fail, I noticed it particularly with Topaz. Topaz AI, I found, was very good at grass, animal fur, stone, any natural textures. Shirts and windows or doorways or numbers or text, and it hasn't got a clue.
No,
because it doesn't know what they are. So you'll get windows which go off in different directions instead of being rectangular.
Yeah.
You'll get text
Yeah.
that looks sharp, but doesn't actually have any proper characters. So I think it can work especially well for natural subjects, but it's not very good with man-made detail.
No.
But that's only so far. But I think even beyond that, I think you've got to ask yourself, what are the conditions where you need such an enlarged image where it actually matters? And I do feel that it can only ever be relevant if you're inviting somebody to look at a giant artwork at arm's length.
Yeah.
If you're not doing that, then the argument about megapixels and enlargement changes, and it doesn't mean what you think it means.
Yeah, and I think on the topic of AI, I think people should actually manage the expectation despite what a lot of the marketing materials is suggesting. And there are so many.
Yes, of
well,
course.
literally, AI is the biggest thing, right? Especially in the last couple of years in photography and video world. Because there are so many enhancements, so many manipulation that you can do, especially in the last 12 months, all these regenerative AI features on Adobe stuff and also other companies' softwares. They're magnificent, they're good, but they are not that good if you expect it to do a lot of stuff for you. And I would say that they are good for doing some light work that you probably had to do hours before, like for instance, if you have to do a lot of retouching on skins, for instance, and airbrushing skin, there are a new batch of AI skin enhancing softwares out there now. Is getting more and more and better, and those are good because they are trained for one specific purpose, is to look at the skin, and those are actually working quite well. But if you look at generative AI, for instance, let's say remove background or change background, change the sky and change this and change that, or replacing this and that, and those aren't always good because it can be quite horrible at times. And it's just at the moment I think they need a lot of more data to learn. I don't know if anyone has read news in the last 2 to 3 months on the technology sector. They all saying that now AI is a big thing, but increasing more and more examples from these AI companies is that they are finding it very difficult to train the AI model, the brain, so to speak.
It's difficult to train it legally without infringing other people's IPR. So Adobe's in a bit of a fix because it's going really hard on AI, but it can't use any commercially owned images to train the AI, and it can't allow its AI to produce objects that might resemble trademarked products or perhaps races or members of the population that are identifiable, because then Adobe becomes a racist AI company. so the kind of object generation you get from Adobe at the moment, it works if it's generic, like you want a mountain or a tree or some grass.
Yeah.
But if you want a person, it's much more difficult because Adobe is very sensitive to the dangers of misrepresenting groups of people.
Yeah.
And also, it does not want to, if you ask it to put a boat on a lake, it'll do it so it's very far away. And there's no danger that you might identify it as being a certain brand or model of boat.
Yeah.
And heaven forbid there should be any name on that boat. So the commercial situation for AI is becoming more complex. And as you say, Jimmy, training AI becomes difficult because more and more AI companies are being called out for using other people's real assets illegally for their own product.
Yeah.
Which is...
I think that really is a problem at this moment in time when is like as much as the AI world wants to continue to evolve and improve, but there is certainly hitting a lot of break walls at the moment. They seem to be not moving forward. The development has become stagnant at the moment, and they're not getting any better. They work, but only in certain situations and very limited at a time. And so just very be careful about what you see on the marketing materials at the moment from all sorts of AI programs, because they may not be what you are thinking or expecting for to help your type of photography, for instance.
Yeah, I think so. And I think AI software can perhaps get you out of a hole if you've hit a technical disaster.
Yep.
If you shot something that's not sharp and it's the only one you've got, then maybe topaz sharpen can make it acceptable for you or your clients. But these things, they're not magic. They're not some kind of super science that suddenly appeared on the market. They have definite limitations.
Yep.
They can get you out of a hole, but they're not the cures that the publishers would like you to think they are.
So the wise word is...
How did we get there? How did we get to this?
I don't know. But the wise word is still perfect your photographic skills. Whatever you do, try to get it right in camera, so you don't have to rely on all this AI stuff to do the work for you. Or choose the right tool for the right job, right? You know, if you need high resolution, then you need the high resolution camera. Instead of relying on the AI enlargement. If you want to have some brilliant sky, wait for the weather and go and shoot under that under that circumstance, rather than relying on AI. And I think it's still more fun, right? Photography is all about fun, about the experience, about the journey for taking that photograph. It's not about afterward. You're trying to change this, change that, you know. And unless you're an digital artist, that's a different thing, you know. Well, but if you're a photographer, I would still hands-on, you know, go and do it.
I think I'm the last person to be able to talk because I do a lot of editing. But my editing is all about enhancing and exaggerating what was there, because what fascinates me about photography is what you see and you capture it. So my editing is based around then exaggerating and intensifying that thing.
Yep.
As soon as I start adding things in, then I've stopped being a photographer. I become a creator, if you like. And it loses something for me. Because part of my fascination with photography is that the world is a strange and extraordinary place. If I start turning it into something of my own imagination, it loses something. It might mean I've produced much more profitable images. And I think there are lots of people out there who've profited by the manipulative power now at their disposal. But it's not what interests me.
No, absolutely. I just started looking at also another couple of comments right here, and Mark, and it would be amazing in a smaller form factor, the S1R2, if they ever bring one out, and with a tilt screen, and I'm in. I think that there's still a big fan group out there about the SH series, and quite a few people I would already say HX1 earlier. So that'd be quite interesting.
Sorry, Jimmy, which one's that again? Which series?
SH, oh, S1R, S1 series. Yes.
Yeah. They're big solid cameras, and they've got top plates. They've got LCDs in the top plate. They are sturdy old cameras. You wouldn't buy one of those if you're looking for a lightweight camera, but they are nice to handle.
Yeah, I don't mind big cameras, to be honest. I mean, I still love my E1X, and I know small cameras are always good for traveling, but you know, if I ever want to go out and work, I tend to go for bigger cameras. You know, just that reassuring feel when you're holding a big cameras, and when you come to work.
I think one of the early lenses launched with the S1 series was the Lumix 24-105 f4. That is a hefty lens. It's all right on an S1 or an S1R, but you wouldn't much like it on an S5.
Right.
But back to that whole thing again, sorry.
That's okay, no worries.
Yeah.
Blaine has another one here. I know it's beating a dead horse, but Panasonic not coming out with a smaller body to match this particular lens here, the 9mm at 1.7. It's a missed opportunity. Yeah, they brought this lens out. Like I said, it was shocker to me because I never expected they would suddenly bring out this lens. But it was a very good lens. And yes, you're right. It's a small, tiny lens. Why didn't have a small body at the same time, a new small body to go with it? I don't know. I have no idea. And it must come out of nowhere. Maybe this lens was developed some time ago, and Lumix just simply forgotten about it because we're so focused on the full frame stuff. And then say, "Oh shoot, we got a lens here. Let's release it."
Well, if they still made the GX8 or GX9, that'd be quite a nice fit.
It's a proper street photography lens. I think it's a really cool one as well. And I love that lens for vlogging. It's good enough. It's AF. It's light. It's weather sealed. And it's not a metal lens, but to be honest, for the intended purposes for the lens, travel, lightweight, ultra wide, autofocus. Yeah, this is a really good combination there, and it's not particularly expensive. So that's quite a good combination there for those who are looking an ultra wide prime. Fast ultra wide prime for 1.7 aperture, and for your micro four foot camera, definitely a good lens.
If anyone is interested in used cameras, the GX8 is pretty cheap. It's a bit of a lump by modern standards. It's about the size of a Pen F, I would say.
Yep.
Not the same kind of finish and appeal, but if you are more interested in smaller lenses and a kind of street travel camera, it's worth looking at. I think the video by today's standards would be pretty primitive, but as a stills photography camera, it's pretty good.
Yeah,
and cheap. I think I bought one for about £280 in excellent condition. It is cheap. Yeah, it's just not. It's not fashionable, so it's cheap.
Who cares about fashion?
Me, actually.
So speaking of the one who bought the ZF.
Yeah, well, I mean, I've looked longingly at the ZF, Jamie, but I can't really afford to get a ZF. But what a beautiful camera that is.
Yeah. Well, John Young, and just put a couple of comments here. First of all, could you have a discussion about skin editing for portraits someday? And also to you as well, Rod, about the type of photo editing you just speaking about. And I'm not entirely sure. I mean, how many of you really want to listen to photo editing? Because we actually want to talk a little bit about that. And it's a very useful topic, but also at the same time, quite bluntly speaking, not many people are interested in for some reason.
No.
And every time we talk a little bit about photography theories and photography essence of photography or editing or something really technical, there tend to be less attentions to those stuff. And if for those who will really want to listen to that sort of thing, maybe we can make one happen. So please do leave some comments afterward, and I just want to gauge interest, just how many of you really want to listen to that sort of thing, and because I think it's very beneficial for a lot of photographers. And don't forget, going out taking a photo is only half the story. The other half is actually the editing itself, because that's what brings your photography to life, to the vision that you envisioned before you take that photograph, because the colors, the mood, the structures and everything is all down to the editing there.
It's an interesting topic, isn't it? Because we all tread this kind of tightrope. Even those of us who want to record the world as it is and not fabricate stuff, we still, how we compose a shot, how we adjust the contrast and exposure, what we crop out, how we enhance different areas of the picture. It's still kind of, it's not necessarily fabrication, but it is kind of exaggeration. So we're all on this kind of tightrope between, we want to show what's real, but we still mess around with it to make it better.
We do. I mean,
where you draw the line. But
this has always been the case for photography, right? You know, way back, back. Even you look at the photographers, all the past masters back in the 30s, 40s, and 50s. You know, all the dodge and burn process on the black and white photography give a certain mood for the actual photograph. The framing, the cropping that they do will completely change the narrations of the story. You know, this happening all through the entire photography history there. And so it's not new thing. You know, even now that we have more control because it's digital, so we have a lot of features that we can do, or a lot of things that we can do about the photography to change the complete mood of it. But it doesn't change the fact that these things started way back, you know, like 40, 50 years ago, that we're just doing more these days. But they are actually very interesting because you can change the mood and the narrative of a frame of photograph, just by changing the color, changing the tone, cropping a little bit here and there.
Yeah.
Change everything. It changed everything.
And it's interesting where people choose to draw the line.
Yep.
Whether you do it on principle, whether it's just an aesthetic thing, whatever it is. And I think it's also going to relate to this idea about skin editing for portraits, because anyone who does portrait photography for a living, I'm sure this must have happened to you, Jimmy, is going to come under a certain amount of pressure from their clients.
Absolutely.
To make them look beautiful.
Yep.
And you have to figure out how far to go. And it seems to me the real danger is that if you change somebody who has an individual into an idealized kind of token person, you're not, they might be happy, but you're creating all sorts of awful expectations for everybody else, aren't you?
I mean, it is.
People look like what they look like.
Absolutely. I always say that to a lot of people, and it's all about educations to your clients and also managing the expectations and showing them as many examples as possible to show exactly what I meant by that, because otherwise they might have false impression, especially in today's digital photography. They think that because it's digital, you can Photoshop this, they overuse the word Photoshop because they think Photoshop can do everything. They can transform a person. People say that I look like Angelina Jolie, so that means that when he sees myself, he's got to be Angelina Jolie, right? So you gotta have to manage the expectations there. You may have a little bit like her, but you're not her. You can't make yourself look like her in a photograph.
Why would you not rather be the person you are? Maybe Angelina Jolie would like to look like you. Who knows?
Exactly. So that's an interesting topic.
Interesting,
Maybe we'll do something about that, and it's maybe more on the educational side, more about the ethical side of it, and also we can talk a little bit about technical side, how we manage the edit skins and things like that. Maybe some other editing techniques that we can showcase.
Could we assemble a bunch of pictures of varying degrees of manipulation and ask people where they would draw the line and say, no, that's too much?
Yep.
But that might be quite difficult to organise. But that is a kind of interesting question, isn't it?
Yep. So remember, leave some comment down below if you guys want to hear anything like this, and we would be happy to do it. But it will take some organizations, it will take some explanations, and certainly it's more like a lecture, not quite a lecture, but it's a fun kind of discussion. And we're happy to do that because we want to do more educational stuff, especially in the photography spectrum. There are a lot to talk about in photography, framing, editing. Storytelling, all sorts of stuff we can talk about in photography, because they are all interesting, at least to me anyway. I think they're very interesting stuff, because that is what kind of take your photography to the next level. You may all be familiar with composition. You may all very good at exposing your photograph. You've got a perfect exposure triangle. You know what high key photo is like, what low key photo is like. You know all the technical stuff. But if you want to make sure that you can go into the next step, you start entering competition. You have to submit a series of photos that make sense. What are they? What does that mean by having a series of photos? What are these things? How can they relate to each other? These things are all the next step. The next step that you kind of have to study very hard, look at other examples, really have to ask people questions. And this is what hopefully we may be able to help in that sense, because it's definitely not an easy thing to explain, so it will take time.
No,
it will take not more than one chat session to do. That's for sure. And we shall see.
I think it's also difficult for people still learning or just starting out. It does seem like photography is a popularity contest, and if you don't get the most likes, or if everyone doesn't like your photographs, they're bad photographs. That is only true if you want to do the same stuff as everybody else in the world. If you feel you have an individual talent or an individual way of seeing the world or an individual vision, you are going to have to accept that not everyone else will get it. And a lot of the time you're going to be on your own, and you just have to push on and do it your way. And one day the recognition will come. But you won't get very far if you try to make every photograph liked
Yep.
by everyone.
Yep.
Can't be done.
We got one fan already. Sure, count me in. It's interesting. Very good. Very good.
That's one more than we had before.
Excellent. That's very good. Well,
Yeah,
we shall
yeah.
think about that. Don't forget to
Yeah.
leave us some comments, and I'm pretty sure we'll make something happen. Maybe more like an introduction session that we can talk a little bit about. And then if more interest showing, then we can do a slightly more specific, slightly more in detail in certain areas, and we slowly expand it that way. And maybe we can do something like that. That would be quite cool. And just maybe last couple of things before we wrap up today, and just one comment from Linda. Does anyone have any experience with newer MFD sensor and the old 14 to 45 Panasonic lens? Panasonic, not Panasonic. It's very sharp on my 16 megapixel sensors. I think the 14 to 45 is the kit lens, right? If I remember correctly.
Yeah. But it's the older, bigger one, not the like 12 to 32, which is the
Right.
pancake one.
Right.
But it's a bit bigger. It's a long time since I used that, and I only ever used it on a 12 megapixel camera, so I can't really say. But
Yep.
16 megapixels to 20 isn't a massive leap.
Yeah. But 16 to
So, who
25
knows?
is a big leap.
It's a bigger leap.
Yeah.
At least it's not like 26 to 40 on Fujifilm. Sorry to bring that up again.
So yeah, it's hard to
I
say.
don't
It's
know.
hard
I
to say.
Can't say.
Yeah, it's hard to say, and it's probably easier just to maybe pop down to your local camera store, just take that lens, just to snap a couple of photos and see it for yourself. I think that might be an easier answer than that, because I don't personally have that lens, and so I can't tell you straight away. I do have some older Olympus lenses, and I can tell you right now, some of the older one, especially one that launched between 2012 to 2016, those lenses may not work as well in the 20 megapixel sensor micro four third camera, worse on the 25. So we kind of talked a little bit about that earlier, and some of the older optics that's kind of over 10 years old optics, they are showing their age now because they weren't designed for these sort of resolutions at the time.
Yeah.
Especially kit lenses. Pro lenses, on the
Yeah,
other hand, they already designed in a way that is maybe a little bit future proofing, because they are supposed to be high performing lenses, so they will perform even with the 20 and 25. I can't guarantee anything higher they will still be the case, but so far from all my pro lenses that use on the 25 megapixel Lumix and the Lumix cameras, they all seem to be fine. So all the pro lenses from Olympus and also the Panasonic lenses from Lumix, they're all very, very good on the Lumix cameras and the 25 megapixel sensor. But the lesser, more consumer level lenses may be a slightly different story.
I have a notion. I can't prove this technically, that sensors with a higher pixel density are less tolerant to lighter, sharper angles, particularly at the edges of the frame. So I have a feeling the lenses that show some quite nasty color fringing at the edge of the frame on a modern 20 megapixel sensor were probably fine on the older sensors, but it's just the higher pixel density is causing more issues with the performance. I don't know. I'd need to look into the scientific literature on that one.
That I'll refer to Rod.
Oh, I was afraid you'd say that. I thought we might know.
Right. Anyway, I guess we're gonna end today's chat with this. Thank you for joining us, and it's been a fun chat about today's Panasonic thing. Leave us some comments below, and I do want to cover it more in the chat today. Is the future of Lumix, and because we're just simply running out of time, it's almost 2 hours now. So if you have any thoughts, any comments about what you would like to see from Lumix in the next few years, what they should be concentrating on, what sort of products that you would like to see them bring out in the next few years. Maybe another small camera, for instance, like a GM, maybe another smaller portable full feature camera like the GX series for micro four third, or maybe like the full frame, the S1 series, and they bring it out again, big cameras. Anything that you are thinking about, if you're already a Lumix user, if you're a fan of Lumix, what sort of thing you would like to see, we would love to hear from you. Maybe we can have another chat at some point about all this stuff that you just mentioned. So that would be quite interesting. So thank you very much.
What
Hey,
does
sorry.
Panasonic need to do to stand out again?
Oh, that's the big word.
Yeah. Sorry, Jimmy, I interrupted. Carry on.
No. It's fine. It's fine. Okay. Thanks a lot for joining us, guys. And no doubt we're going to see you again next week. And we're going to have another brand talk next week. So far, we have covered Fuji. We have covered OM System. We today covered Panasonic Lumix. And next week, we're going to have another brand. Maybe another big brand. So let's see, because we have a lot of brands to talk about. There's so many manufacturers out there now, and it's going to be an interesting thing to learn about all these brands and learn about all these cameras that they have currently, and also we quite good to discuss what sort of future that they have together as a community, not just two of us, but I know I want to involve all of you, especially that you guys may have some brands that you're using that we don't have. For instance, I mean, I'm not a Pentax user, so if any Pentax users out there, I would like to hear from you guys. And anyone, Rod just showed you the Ricoh, right? You got the Ricoh camera, the new Ricoh, and so any Ricoh users out there, like we'll be interested to talk about that brand as well, even though they don't have many cameras at the moment. It's almost like the variation of the same cameras, but basically it'll be interesting to see your thoughts about that too. Okay, anyway, thanks a lot for joining us, and no doubt we're gonna see you all next time. So until next time, see you all very soon. Bye for now.